Well, good morning, good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
We've got a sweet video here for you, and actually it's from a few months ago.
Yeah.
When we were in Oklahoma.
In the summertime.
But it's a super great tour.
It is.
Of a sod house.
Yeah, you'll never find a better tour guide than this lady. She was so knowledgeable.
Yes.
And shared with us so much information. It was just really great. We thoroughly enjoyed the tour and thought we'd love to share it with you.
So I think it's a good video. It's about, I don't know, 25 minutes or so long, but we think that you'll really enjoy it. Here you go.
This is Sandy. Had to go a mile north from here to a low valley area abundant with buffalo grass, each block being 18 inches long, 12 inches wide, and 4 inches thick. 1/2 acre of sod cut 4 inches thick is 96 tons of sod it took to build the house. This one is said to be quite luxurious for the fact it's 2 rooms instead of 1, but especially the fact that it does have glass windows in it. He brought the glass windows back from Wichita, Kansas, each costing $1.25. Total cost of the Sod House, $6.20. Yet, the day that he staked his claim, he only had a quarter in his pocket and a 2-cent stamp. The value of that quarter today, if you and I were to start our life the way he did, he would only have $6.86 in our pockets today. Upon completing it, he then married, brought Mrs. McCulley out here. Sadie brought with her an organ, a dresser, and 2 trunks of goods. He then offered her the opportunity of a wood floor below her or a tin roof above her. She selected the wood floor. It was added 1 year later in 1895, but according to the farm photo behind me, by 1897 it does show a tin roof. We always tease everyone, tell them he probably got a guilty complex for putting a tin roof on the barn, so added it to the home as well. That would not surprise me in the least.
That sounds right.
Definitely. And of course, another thing that adds to the preservation of this sod house are the interior walls. Sod houses were nothing more but mudded in. However, alkali clay is abundant in the area. He understood the value of it. Went down along the creeks and rivers collecting it, plastered the interior walls of clay, sealing them completely off, therefore never allowing any interior deterioration to occur, only exterior. The red that you see on the corners today, this is new sod that was replaced in 1967, all the rest being original. And then the roof you're looking at is also a new roof put on in 67. This one today, however, it is only 2 inches thick. The original sod roof was 12 inches thick. A 12-inch thick roof is 7,800 pounds of sod above you. You actually needed that weight to hold the sod house together and the thickness to endure the rains from washing it away. And of course, after Sadie gave birth to their daughter, her helpless poor, they were in need of a milk cow, and the only 2 items of value they had to trade for the milk cow was his shotgun or her organ. You do not trade a shotgun off, it's needed for food. So they traded the organ off, got the milk cow. What a great sense of humor, named the milk cow Old Organ. Within a couple more years, her health never improved, and Sadie did pass away. Today, when you walk inside and look above you, you're going to see sheets tacked to the ceiling, purpose to catch dirt and bugs from falling on you. However, in the early 90s, I had the privilege and honor of hearing the granddaughter speak. As she stood and gave the history that day, all at once she rolled her eyes at the sheets. Looking back at all of us, her comment was, "Yes, I remember grandmother talking about the snake slithering across the sheets at night." You did not kill a snake. It ate rodents. You didn't kill mud daubers on the exterior. They ate the spiders and bugs living in the walls. You took care of nature. Nature took care of you. All I can say is I'm thankful I live today.
Oh, man.
Yes.
I mean, can you imagine if I thump in the middle of the night and you've got a snake right there in bed with you? I don't mind looking down at him. I just don't want him looking me in the eyes. And of course, after Sadie's death, he did finally remarry. His second wife, Pearl, quite a city girl, originally from Illinois, now living in Wichita, they met and married. When he brought her back to this barren part of Oklahoma, quite an adjustment. Documents state that she wanted to liven the home up, so she wallpapered with red and became quite the gossip of the community. A Victorian home, yes. A country home, no. Heaven forbid, how dare you. When you go inside, you'll see on the dividing wall, it was originally wallpapered with 1895 newspaper, later wallpaper when they could afford it. But on the doorway to your left, right before you enter into the kitchen, are 4 tiny, tiny pieces of the original red wallpaper. Not bright and bold, a tiny print, very soft, very vivid, but still a no-no. And the other thing that Pearl was known for is one day she's mixing dough. It did not rise. She did not want Marshall to look upon her as a failure. She took it out, buried it, made another batch, and everything was fine. Late that day, he took a walk through the orchard, came upon a strange mound of dirt, hit his shovel in it, down went the dough. The heat from the ground activated the yeast and it rose. Documents state that he stabbed his shovel in it, held it inside the house, and never let her live down her buried dough. By 1909, they built a new 2-story home that would have sat where the parking lot is today. It caught fire in the 60s, so the Sod House outlasted it. And in the concrete at the base, this is not part of the original structure. It was poured by Marshall at a later date. Again, records state chickens were scratching at the base of the old soddy, so he poured concrete up against it to keep the chickens from scratching away. So let y'all look around. Holler if you have any questions.
Well, thank you. That was great.
All I say is I'm thankful I did today.
This is him.
Yes, me too.
This is him, huh?
This is him at the age of 90. He lived to be 95, 3 months away from being 96.
Wow.
And then over here back on the wall, there's a whole photographs of him at the age of 18. Quite a difference in the young man. And
Yeah.
another interesting thing about him at the age
So
of...
he was young when he built this.
He was 26 years old when he built
26.
this. But at the age of 18, he and a brother went to Washington State and worked on a logging crew, and yet he was out there for 8 years. I could never figure out for the longest time, I mean, okay, if he's out there for 8 years, why did he come here penniless? My biggest question for the longest time was, okay, maybe he sent the money home to the family, then the family helped him. They did that a lot. I later had a family from Oregon here, and they went on to explain to me that the logging crews out there were just like coal mining crews. They did nothing but pay back for their room and board, pay back for their food. By the time they paid all that back, basically made nothing. And so it made it a bit easier understanding of him coming here basically penniless.
With nothing, yeah.
And actually is
I owe my soul to the company store.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the other thing that he did, after he staked his claim, you could actually be off the land as long as it was under 6 months. And that's what he did. He went back to Kansas, did sharecropping, and it tells how he bought the windows and brought them back in February. February would have been right on the 6-month time framing of being off the land for 6 months. So that allowed them to do that. And of course, not being married, he could go back and so forth.
Wow.
So at least he could get some
How
money
neat.
tucked away.
We're going to show you, let's see, when he was 18 years old.
Yes, this photograph in the top left corner, that's Marshall at 18.
Let's see.
There you go.
Hard to get a good picture of that, but
Without shadow.
Wow.
yeah.
Well, he obviously did a good job on it.
Well, the
on that
interesting
house.
thing about is the lay of the sod. He laid one lengthwise, one widthwise, then width and length. People that farm will tell you it's just like stacking hay bales. It's a natural interlocking method. I've always used it as an example. Well, one day, I had 3 farmers come in, so I went right into that history because I knew they'd enjoy it.
Yeah.
And as I just mentioned, and each one of those men chimed right in, each one with their own story about stacking hay bales. I only wish I had a video recorded on that day. I backed off just to hear them talk about it. And one of the men had a grandson with him, little bitty type, maybe only 5 years old, did not seem like he was paying an ounce of attention. And yet, all at once, there was a pause, and the 5-year-old chimed right in. His comment to all of us was, "No, it's just like Legos."
It's just like
I wish
Legos.
you could have seen everyone. I thought my jaw was going to hit the ground, and the men just stood there frozen as well.
That sounds
and
right,
I use that as a teaching tool for school kids today, so they can understand it.
Yeah.
That particular photo that you're looking at there of the sod sitting outside, what's truly amazing about that photograph, and the grandson pointed it out to me, I'd heard a story. I told Sam what I heard. He says, I don't think so. Granddad took care of this, you know. He walks up and he goes, yep, you see that stone? He hung it from the corner of the house to keep the wind from blowing the roof off. It is a huge stone hanging there. And of course, people today say how the sod house is just bowing. It's been bowing for a long time. This is nothing new.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. I never noticed it as being a huge stone until Sam pointed it out.
Oh, wow.
And then once you see it, it's just so obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you do what you have to do.
It was a couple of weeks before I finally figured it out. He wasn't talking about tearing it down and being costly. If he tore it down, he would have to replace it because he was using it.
Right.
And he would have to pay for a new structure. So yes, it would be costly.
Yeah, it sure would be. Now with their sod machines, the sod comes out like 2 inches thick. 1.5 inches to 2 inches thick.
Yeah, just like that right there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, please don't touch.
Oh, sorry.
Now see right behind
Had a
this
feeling
is the
you were
actual,
supposed to touch
this is
it.
the actual sod plow that he used. And you get on that side, the shear blade shows better. But the thing about a sod plow, the shear blade on it is perfectly straight. You and I today, most of the time, when we see a one-row plow, it is a moldboard plow. The blade stands very tall and very deep. But a sod plow, that shear blade is perfectly straight. So in plowing it, the furrow slice is turned so slowly, you had perfect strips of sod. And the photograph up above gives you a better understanding. On the left, you can see the furrow slices that have been plowed. Man on the left taking a straight blade shovel, cutting it into blocks. Of course, the man in the center is loading it. This block here, if it were the size of Marshall McCulley's block, it would weigh 40 to 50 pounds, depending upon the moisture content. But what I find fascinating about this photograph, if you look on the ground in front of him and on the ground behind him, this is how many sod blocks have been discarded. If he picked it up to crack, they're no longer any good. So this is how many have been discarded when loading it. No telling how many more were discarded when building. It's like, whoa. And of course, buffalo grass, the root system of buffalo grass is over 12 inches deep. And so it didn't matter how much of it you plowed up, you know, the root system was still there. That's how come it could endure.
So the cutting those for the roof with 12 inches thick.
Well, you would have left it the 4-inch thickness here, and you would have done 3 layers of sod.
Okay.
And there was 3 different ways. I can't remember.
And they would overlap them, similar to stacking hay.
Right, and there were 3 different methods. I can't ever remember the third one. 2 of them make sense. The third one didn't, so I never locked in. You could do it what was called shingle style. That's what you're looking at on this sod house today. Or you just lay it literally one whole row horizontal, the whole layer, then a vertical on top of that, and another horizontal on top of that. And you would actually have an edging that you would build so that it couldn't slide off. That's why a sod house roof is so low, because they couldn't put a high peak to it, or first rain come and it would just slide off.
Because it has a high clay content, so that makes it slick.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And then when you go inside, the timber used here, the ridge poles are cedar, and then the rest is blackjack. Of course, that's cedar and oak, and both of those are water resistant timbers. And so that too. Once you had a tin roof, this is another thing that's misunderstood quite often. If you built a wood roof first, you would then put a layer of sod on top of that, because you had to have the insulation. Reverse it out, if you put a tin roof on, you would have your sod roof on, and then a tin roof framing on top of that sod, just to keep the water off of it. But you'd still have that
insulation,
the sod for insulation. And if you were wealthy, you had the wood roof down with the sod on top. If you were mediocre, then you had tar paper you put down. If you didn't have the money for that, then you went and cut tall grasses and vines and put a huge layer of that, then your sod on top of that. That would help it from just completely falling through on you.
Right.
And into your food, and into your bed, and everywhere else.
That's where the sheets come in handy, though.
I've heard somewhere that the feed sats, when the feed companies found out that
they put
people
print.
were using them, to make clothes that they started printing now.
Yes, and originally they were white only, and
Right.
the farmer was supposed to put his name on it and take it back to refill it. The women were so happy to have free fabric, they didn't even let the white sacks go back.
Yeah.
Then in the early 20s, solid colors came in. In the late 20s and early 30s, prints came in. And then the thing that really made the boom on the prints was actually Gone with the Wind prints were made. And then Walt Disney came in. And actually this became the selling. It didn't matter what you put in that sack. It was that fabric on the outside.
Yeah. It was, yeah, you wanted the...
And a woman's
Print.
dress would have to have 3 feed sacks to make a full dress for an adult woman. But all of this actually came about because of the lengthen it. So I researched chenille, and she was a 14-year-old girl. She went to a wedding, and she saw a candle wicking bedspread. And as a child, she went home trying to figure out how to do candle wicking, and in turn, she created chenille.
How about that?
And so chenille is basically a quilt design or a geometric design. And there's a road from Georgia down to Florida, and it's called the Peacock Road because the peacock became what she was known for. And at this point in time later, there were so many people wanting her chenille bedspreads that actually Sears and Roebuck bought them from her, put them in the Sears and Roebuck catalog, and put her name on them, and they sold. The most expensive was $1.75.
Oh my. Oh my God.
It's like, but the other thing that's so amazing about it, basically again, it's nothing more than a straight stitch and it's locked in there, but they don't really tell you how it was made, but I do believe the secret to it is this is all cotton thread. So once you stitch it, you clip it, and then you put it into boiling water, and it shrinks it, and it locks it in right there. And then they actually hung it up when it was still wet, not drying, and beat it just to fluff it.
To make it fluffy.
And so that's how the chenille came about.
Wow. Wow. You know some history.
I like history. If I pick me up and throw me anywhere. We don't have enough fun with the basics of history and the little things.
So this is the concrete. It's not actually a footing. It's put on the outside to pour it on the outside just to protect it from the elements and from the chickens.
Right. And I do believe in my years here, they talk about how frugal Marshall McCulley was, and then they talk about how precise he was. And this really blows my mind. If he mixed concrete, he should have had enough to have one pipe all the way around. I mean, you're pouring concrete, you always have enough. I now personally believe, don't have any documentation to prove it, but the root cellar that's here, this was the new root cellar built in 1911 for the new home. And there's 3 dates behind it that don't match in all actuality. The first one says 1911, that's 2 years after the new home was built. But then it jumps to 1917 or the early 20s. You don't wait that long for a root cellar.
Yeah.
That's your most vitally important thing. You've got to have that to store the food. I now personally believe, I think that was a dirt root cellar in 11. Then I think either the late teens or early 20s it was poured to concrete, whichever date it was. They say that he poured this in 1921, and I lay you odds that this is leftover concrete from the root cellar.
Yeah.
Because it matches the fact that it's literally up and down. You know, he poured it according to the heaviest parts of deterioration occurring.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's just common sense is what it comes down to. But it's just amazing.
And these ends are repairs. But you can see the red dirt, which I'm sure that originally, before the sun beat on it, the whole thing was that red dirt color.
Well, I think there's another twist in here. Because they went all over, I had a man come in, and Clifford's father-in-law actually did this, and he said he went everywhere trying to match it, and they couldn't match it. Their thought at the time period was the amount of sun bleaching and the weathering causing the deterioration in color tone. That's part of it, but that's not the main proper. You have the Dust Bowl days that came in, and that changed everything.
It did.
And I think this is why they could never match it, no matter, because they went back to the same exact field of where this was dug from, but it's still the Dust Bowl.
So who knows? That sod right there could have came from Texas.
Yeah, but it actually came, I believe they said south of here. They went north, I guess they went all directions to different fields. But that is not buffalo grass either.
Oh, really? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It is Bermuda. It is not buffalo grass. And so you have two different soil consistencies, so they'll deteriorate differently.
So this house is very, very interesting. He plastered all the inside to keep the dirt and everything out. Apparently with gypsum is what it looks like. She wanted blue in her bedroom, so I find this very interesting that they poured bluing in the mix before they put it on the walls. Bluing was very available. It was to whiten clothes, and they poured bluing in the mix before they plastered the wall in the bedroom. And they put sheets up to keep the varmints, snakes, bugs, all those things from falling on them in the middle of the night.